All right, let us start with some of the challenges faced in communication, quickly evolving events of last year. Morgan, let's start with you. Take us inside the mayor's office. I mean, yours is an administration that came in wanting to do something about violent crime, about the homicide rate in the city, about affordable housing. Then the pandemic hits. Walk us through what this last year has been like.
Yeah, absolutely. And we continue to be administration interested in solving violent crime and creating more affordable housing options.
Those priorities haven't diminished at all, but
they've been exasperated.
Yeah,
certainly. Yeah, you know, we are approaching the 1-year anniversary of COVID in Kansas City. I believe by end of today, we'll probably hit 500 deaths, COVID-related deaths in Kansas City, Missouri. Of course, we just hit 500,000 COVID-related deaths in this country. So it's been a long and devastating year. And certainly, you know, the real heroes here are healthcare workers, our first responders. You know, you'll remember as well as I, the Big 12 tournament was happening in Kansas City. That was kind of the 1-year mark for us. And they pulled players off the court as they were warming up midday in a day of the Big 12 tournament and said, we're done, we're out. And that was the first moment for me where I think I felt the real gravity of what this was going to become. I think we were kind of shell-shocked. I think our friends in media also, all of us together realizing for the first time, this isn't just a travel virus on the coasts. This is something that's very close, very personal. And I don't think any of us realized it was going to be an entire year at that point in time. But, you know, we acted quickly, decisively. We're trying to be as engaged and active every single day in our messages as we can be with the community. And it has been just the greatest learning experience of my life and my career thus far.
Quick follow-up. Were you in the room? When was the moment that the mayor, whether it was a phone call from Rex Archer or I don't know who, but when was the moment that you guys up on the 29th floor found out this is a thing?
Yeah, you know, so it had been, as you know, cropping up across the nation, particularly on the coast, and was slowly coming inward toward the Midwest. And we conducted a meeting with all of our department heads in late February, thinking that, you know, it was better to be overly cautious than not. It might not hit Kansas City, but let's at least all get on the same page. And I remember what was so interesting about that is we posted on social media a picture of that meeting. I was curious to see how the community responded, and there wasn't much response. There wasn't much engagement. I don't think people at that point realized the gravity of the situation. And within 14 days, it had escalated into, you know, a crisis that we needed to deal with right now. I really think it was that Big 12 tournament, the moment they pulled the players off the court, that we knew that this was really, really serious.
All right, Isaac, there were many fronts that you had to manage as an employer, a business owner, leasee on the plaza, certainly, an entrepreneurial community leader. Talk about the challenges that you saw. And has your observation of those challenges changed now that we're a year down the road?
All good questions. And so on the first front, as far as being a leasee on the plaza, do coaching and speaking and actually talking to a lot of business owners and whatnot in Kansas City, but I'm also a business owner of physical locations owning 3 Yogurtinis in Kansas City. And so I was in the same ballpark as everyone else, trying to kind of hearing about it in February and knowing that something's coming, but not really knowing if it was going to affect us. And then March hits and businesses start to close and sales start to get, you know, messed with and everything. And we just didn't know. Like, we just didn't know what we didn't know at the time. So for my businesses, we started to lose sales. People stopped going outside and whatnot. And we decided to close just because we didn't know how serious this was. I mean, at the time,
was it cheaper just to shut down than to try and stick it out?
We didn't know. We really didn't know. So for us, it first hit March 13th, but by March 15th, everything went from 100% sales to about 75% sales to 9% sales in 2 days. People just, once it was here, it was here. So several days after that, we decided to close just to reassess, get the lay of the land, see what was going on in the mayor's office, see what was going to get passed down, talk to some other business owners, and just reassess, because we didn't want to be the reason why people were getting sick and whatever was going to come after that. So we had to get on another level of transparency with our customers, with our vendors and everything, using social media and whatever outlets we could. But I loved your optimism and sentiment saying, we got this, because what I saw from Kansas City was a rallying around one another, like really taking care of one another, supporting local businesses and supporting healthcare workers and whatnot. And it was really, really cool to witness and see.
When it comes to the running of your stores, was this a moment where you're relying on some corporate guidance as to figure out how to navigate the future, or are you just trusting your own instincts and sources of information?
A little bit of both. Our corporate was actually really hands-on in giving us information on what was going on a national level. They also were helping us talking to our landlords to figure out rent. Some helped us out, some gave abatements, some gave deferrals, but some did nothing. And so they're helping with that, but they're also trying to help us figure out what to do, because the frozen yogurt industry is really volatile anyway, and we have a lot of overhead. And so, being able to be closed for several days, we're trying to figure out which stores we're going to make and which ones weren't, while also talking to other local businesses and trying to help them through this crisis and of what was going on. So it was intense on both fronts.
And the situation now with your stores is what? Are you still closed? Are you doing carry out or curbside? Give us an idea of what's going on now.
So we went literally, I feel like we've tried and done everything. So we started out, tried to manage by staying open in March. We ended up closing for 10 days just to reassess. Hey, how do we keep our customers safe? How do we keep our employees safe? Ended up opening back up, only curbside, which if you've been to Yogurtini or understand self-serve frozen yogurt, it is self-serve. The whole process is you do everything yourself. So we're essentially a buffet. Couldn't do that anymore. So we just did carry out and delivery. Had to switch everything up. We were actually serving it before. My team was very shaken because they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to make it and everything. They loved just being able to relax and talk to people and that kind of stuff. So we opened back up, started marketing for it. Eventually switched back to doing half open. People can come into the lobby, but we were still serving them. And then we actually went full on again, but we put in a 7-step process to make sure that people were distanced, everything was sanitized, and there was no cross-contamination or anything. So we're fully open now.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, as communicators, we all have tools in our toolkit to help us get important messages certainly across, and whether it's social media, websites. Do you find new tools to help you get the message out, or to, as it says here, control the message more effectively, especially with the rapid day-to-day changes that have come with the story? Morgan, you first.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to traditional media, social media, something that we've been leveraging a lot since the beginning of the pandemic is actually our business community, our businesses that are connected with the city in any capacity. Hopefully you all have received this. We've been trying to send out posters, flyers, notices, asking them to help share the message in your doorways. We're sending text messages to all Kansas Cityans who are signed up, of course, using newsletters and things like that. And really, really relying on community organizations and community leaders. I think some of our neighborhood associations have been really vital partners throughout all of this, who can communicate face-to-face with their neighbors in ways that we always can't, especially with the pandemic. And so that's been really helpful. And I think and I hope that those relationships will continue, and that will be an everyday part of our media arsenal moving forward, even once we move beyond COVID.
Sure. Isaac?
Yeah, ours is the same thing. We spend a lot of time with marketing and pushing things out to our community, where when COVID started, we flipped it on its head, and we needed our community to, one, support us, but also to be giving us information on things that we were doing right, things that we could be doing better, really, really relying on the community, but also putting another level of transparency in. Instead of marketing and talking about, hey, what we're doing, please come see us. It was more into showing that, hey, we're a business, but there's people behind this business as well. And that was something that we really didn't do before. We were really honest with how certain things were affecting us and how it could potentially affect other people. And I think that level of transparency helped everyone. And again, I saw that across the whole city, with everyone sharing information and sharing thoughts and being there for one another, which I think in general made Kansas City closer. And help the businesses get through it as well.
I may throw in just a slightly different perspective on this particular question from our standpoint as reporters. It's been we know more than we did a year ago. Like everybody else, we didn't have a playbook on this either.
Yeah.
When it comes to covering this particular story. A story that I think we knew early on would be life-changing on so many levels. But I don't know that we anticipated how quickly this story would change and from day to day. And when those stories change, the message gets changed. And people become, at least my experience from viewer emails and phone calls and just conversations with people, when that message changes from one day to the next, people get frustrated. They get confused. They get, okay, what am I supposed to do now? And as we're getting information from people that we believe are trusted sources in this, and when that message changes, it seems as if every time we were able to take a step forward, something would happen that causes all of us to take 2 steps back.
Yeah.
And so, and when that happens over multiple periods of time in the course of the last 12 months, I think you have our customers, at least, are again confused, frustrated. What am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
Social media hasn't. You know, I was a big fan of social media when I got onto Twitter years ago. In the spirit of full disclosure, increasingly I am becoming less and less of a fan just because there's just so much crap out there.
Yeah.
And it's just so incredibly hard for us to keep up with that. Thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I think the first example that came to mind was masks.
Yes.
Before they were the most effective tool to fight coronavirus, they were, we were advised against wearing masks. And then that similarly, we're getting our messaging from scientific experts at a higher level than us as well, doing the best that we can to communicate what we think is right, accurate, life-saving.
Yeah.
You know, that message started to change. I think what was interesting particularly about that is you saw kind of a splintering between, not to get too into national politics, but you know, the White House, the commander in chief, and some of our scientific experts at the CDC and other federal agencies, where the president was saying, maybe masks aren't necessary, they're dumb, I don't like them, they look stupid, I'm not wearing them. We had scientific experts saying you must put them on. Being kind of caught in the middle of that between the politics and the science of it was really difficult. And I think it was something that you all and we experienced together. But absolutely, it's frustrating to people. It's why was yesterday this was a bad idea and now this is the life-saving idea. And it takes people, I think, a couple of weeks to catch up sometimes and to come around to that new messaging in a time where we don't have a couple of weeks to spare. And so it's been a challenge, but again, you kind of just have to follow what you believe is, you know, scientifically accurate and trust that that's going to get us through this.
Isaac, I assume you're a consumer of news as much as anyone. What, as somebody who was watching this all evolve over the many months, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, it was scary. It was scary because of what was actually going on with the pandemic and being afraid of getting it and whatever could come with that. Obviously, we've heard every which way of how the virus could affect you if you got it. But on the other side, it was scary because just speaking to the heart of entrepreneurship and small business ownership, it was scary because we didn't know if we're going to be able to feed our families. You know what I mean? Like the small businesses that we own are the lifeblood for our families, and they put food on our table and buy things for our kids, et cetera. And so on 2 fronts, we were nervous and scared about that. But owning a small business and having to get caught up in the social media onslaught of misinformation and then correct information as well, but it changing so rapidly, like you said, was really hard because it felt like an ocean, like with the waves, just wishy-washy, you just get thrown around. And not only were we kind of getting beat up by the changing rules of what we could and could not do as far as occupancy, how many people we could have in the store and all the rules around that. Once we passed those down to our customers, we got beat up by them as well. You know what I mean? And because some agreed and some didn't, and were mad at us because we had to enforce masks and we had to limit occupancy and we were open different hours. And so it was really weird. And my heart breaks for small businesses that are no longer with us. And then the ones that are still here that are just struggling. to stay alive, and they're just continually getting beat up, but they're still showing up to serve their customers.
I want to try to keep this on time as much as I can, and forgive me, Brenda, for going off script there a little bit. The nation in Kansas City's attention soon shifted to the deaths of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and others at the hands of police, igniting outrage, promoting protest demands for racial justice, changes in policing. I think it's safe to say we haven't experienced anything like this since probably 1968, the riots in Kansas City. Isaac, how did this impact you, and what you wanted to communicate to your internal and especially your external audiences?
Yeah, well, this was an interesting topic for me, and it got covered a lot this summer, and I'm glad that the story got told openly and honestly whenever it was reported on. But for me personally, it was tough because I'm a business owner. I want to make money, and I want to serve and make my people happy, my people as far as my employees and my customers. But first, I'm a Black man. And with everything that happened with all the racial injustice and the killings and the brutality and whatever else that happened, I felt a need to speak on it. I've been given a platform, and I think it'd do me a disservice and others if I didn't speak out. And so I did. I'm not, well, I feel like we're all political people now due to the last year, but before that I wasn't political. I'm just for right or wrong. And I spoke up on a lot of things that I thought were wrong, and supported what was right. And it came with some backlash, which really confused me, but also affected my business as well. Again, it became very political, but I think that what happened this past year and what has happened in prior years with Black men and women getting killed or treated a certain way is obviously unfair, and it's not okay. And it's something that all of us need to continue to speak to, so we can create a more equitable society, one that's equal and fair and just and loving for every single person. And I know this last year was tough and it was bad. I personally do think that we've come a far way. You know, my dad's 72, my grandpa, he just passed this past year, but he was 100 years old. And so both of them lived through civil rights movement. You know what I mean? And so having conversations with them, as bad as this last year looked, it has gotten better. You know what I mean? And so I'm encouraged by that. I'm excited by that. Obviously, I know that we have a long way to go, but I think that Kansas City, for the most part, handled things well and again supported each other. And I hope that continues on.
You know, Morgan, your boss and the administration had to politically thread the needle on more than one occasion as it relates to this particular topic. Mm-hmm. Now that we're months down the road, some thoughts?
Yeah, you know, you began this conversation saying here are all sorts of things your office was hoping to accomplish, one of them being violent crime. This is, you know, certainly not the only part, but a necessary part of that conversation. How do we reimagine our relationship between law enforcement and the community? You know, we have launched a new framework for crime prevention, intervention, law enforcement, and community building and administrative reform, kind of as an answer to that. And, you know, I think that has been, we've used that framework to try to keep everyone engaged, to show that we do have a plan, and we're working to create a better community, a more just community, a more equitable community. And so it's, in many ways, I feel like the moment has not passed. We're still deep within it, even though protests aren't still actively happening. It has created a daily conversation in our office, and that continues.
Well, and obviously these were two vastly different issues and situations, the pandemic and the call for racial justice this past year. As a communicator, does that impact how you communicate to your audience, and if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it does. You know, I think that the overarching message this year, the overarching lesson learned this year is honesty begets trust. And that's what we have to do, is continue to communicate honestly, continue to communicate emotionally, to stay connected with the community. And I think that is the only way that you can garner widespread community trust, whether it is a pandemic or protest or anything else under the sun. And so that will continue to be our guiding light.
Isaac?
Yeah, I mean, same exact thing. I think that trust is such a big thing as we're communicating to everyone who's around our organizations. And I saw the importance of it this past year. I think we all did. But also the importance of just leaning on each other. Again, I think it's okay to say that you're not okay. I think it's okay to ask for support. And it's amazing that it gets oftentimes reciprocated. So it allows us to know you don't have to do it on your own, whether you're an individual or you're a business or you're the business owner. And luckily we're in Kansas City. And I think maybe that's just a Midwest thing, I don't know, but we care. I think this last year showed our humanity at a really high level, how we showed up for each other, but also putting an importance in how we show up for ourselves.
I think we're going to get to some questions here in a little bit. And Brenda, I'm not sure the screen in front of me here is set up to do that. So if it's possible to sort of reset that up as we move on here. In either of these situations, the pandemic or the calls for racial justice, was there a moment that stood out to either of you as a game changer? What was it and why? Morgan first.
Yeah, this probably isn't answering the question as directly as you asked it, but I was honored to attend the inauguration with my boss in January. Of course, it was already slated to be a weird inauguration because we were living through a COVID moment. Of course, a couple of weeks before inauguration, there was an insurrection at the United States Capitol. And he and I were standing at the Kansas City airport before leaving town. And there was this moment where, and maybe this has happened to you before, where you realize I'm never going to forget this moment as you're living through it. And in that moment, I'm standing there, I'm speaking with my boss. We've gone through airport security. We're about to board the airplane. And there's another round of airport security. Everyone's IDs are checked one more time. There's this extra layer of security as we're heading to Washington. And that struck me as the culmination of so many things that had happened. And I was already thinking, that's so strange. And then I hear my boss's voice on the overhead system where it was like, hi, Kansas City, this is Mayor Quinton Lucas. Make sure you wear your masks, keep your distance. And so I'm looking at him, I'm talking to him, I'm hearing him. I'm seeing this extra layer of security as we're heading to Washington after this huge, national disaster of sorts. And it was a moment to me where everything I was seeing, everything I was hearing was just, encompassed everything that we had gone through in the past year. And that's, a recent example of something that's really, really stuck with me.
That's a lot to bring in one moment.
How about you, Isaac?
I honestly don't have an answer for it. And that's been one thing that I've kind of been thinking about this past year is, we have this need for certainty and want for certainty, especially I'll speak for small business owners and whatnot. And we kind of want to see what we're getting into and what the future holds. And we have all these plans and goals and we do our vision board and whatnot. And this last year kind of knocked us on our butts to kind of let us know, like, we're not in control. We don't control it. And I'm kind of still in that mindset. It's something that when I'm doing my coaching and consulting and I'm talking to other business owners, talking to my customers and talking to my employees, like, there's still such an unknown in it. And a weird thing that I'm kind of getting from doing like this little survey in my mind as I'm talking to people is it's scary when you don't know the future, but there's a weird sense of contentment too when we're not always trying to have the right answer and always trying to control the future. And so I don't know if there was one moment, but throughout my day or whatever, I'll get that little bit of fear, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then a weird sense of contentment of like, man, I just can't control it. So it has to be right. It has to be okay, right? So definitely didn't answer your question, but that's, I would say, where at least my group of small business owners are at. Maybe that reverberates out as well.
The speaking part of your business, and I made a note of this in my head earlier on to ask you about this. I'm certain that 99% or 100% of your interactions, that side of your business was all in person, and then the pandemic hits and you have to change. How's that transition been for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's just honestly, just like any other entrepreneur, like, well, not even entrepreneur, everyone, we've all had to pivot. The original thing was here, and now we're kind of going over here and over here and over here. But yeah, no more in person. Everything is virtual now, so it's given me a new skill to learn. I'm on Zoom like every single day, so that's been interesting. But for me personally, well, not just me personally, everyone, this isn't going to go away. Like Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, the virtual world. I mean, we're doing it now. It's here to stay, even when this virus is gone.
You don't see a time, at least in the immediate future, where you're back to talking to people in person.
I think that I will for sure be in person, but I think there's always going to be a virtual component. And I don't know how long it's going to take before people feel all the way comfortable to be able to be in person as well. And then especially being in my world, we talk about a lot about productivity and high performance. Sometimes it saves you time, but it's more effective to not do it in person and do it virtually. So I think it honestly opens up a lot of more opportunities, because this realm has always just been in person.
Yeah.
So now we can do it in person and we can do it virtually. So I think that'll be a benefit down the line when all this is over.
We've opened it up to questions, and let's get to some of those right now. Julie says, how do we help our audiences adapt to, or at least be better prepared for change, especially helping people expect change? Morgan?
You know, I think that we need to be from the public space sector where I live, we need to be more anticipatory, and we need to be having conversations about what could be coming down the line much more regularly, and planning for those, not only behind the scenes, but engaging the community and letting them know that those types of conversations are happening, that they too should be thinking about things that necessarily will need to change in the future. And I think this is a good example of us, you know, collectively not doing a great job of that.
Isaac?
Yeah, simply having a plan and then also having a backup plan. just honestly, just being ready.
And then maybe a plan after that.
Yeah.
Adam asks, what did you learn in 2020 that you're able to take forward personally and professionally?
Man, such good questions. 2020, again, I've mentioned it a couple of times, and for me, you know, a business owner is a business owner, but they're also a person as well. So mine's connected. That again, it comes back to we don't have all the control, and I think that there's a lot of growth that can happen in that sector, and that's okay. I think that's a good thing to understand. We don't have control, because then if we know we don't have control, like we just said, then you can prepare for the unknown instead of just sitting smug and like, it's going to be okay. Sales are going to keep going up 11, 12, 13%. You know what I mean? So ultimately, I think that this will make entrepreneurship stronger and better when all this is said and done, because the skills that we're learning.
Yeah. Morgan?
Yeah, you know, I think with everything that we've faced this year, what we've learned is objective one is to save lives. Objective two is everything else. And I think that that's something that's been so true of this past year. And I think, and I hope that that continues as we have discussions surrounding, you know, homelessness, surrounding healthcare, surrounding job security. Saving lives is priority one. Everything else is priority two.
Yeah.
There was also a question, the screen just went a little bit haywire there, so forgive me for that, and indulge me if you would for just a moment here while we get a technical difficulty beyond my control taken care of. Essentially the question was, and I remember seeing it, forgive me, I don't know who asked it, but it's a great question. Moving forward in 2021, what have you learned in this past year that helps you as you look ahead?
I'll tell you our answer, which is there's a mental block. I can't see beyond 5 days from now. And I think that's okay sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's what I've really taken to heart. My stepdad, since he's been in my life, has always had this phrase, what's the next right thing? And so I think that that's how I hope to continue to live my life, which is all I can do is put the next foot forward. And it's going to have to be okay for today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for me, I would say, there's just kind of been this weird thing where we all take a step back and we really assess and reassess our lives, our businesses, et cetera, kind of what's important. And so if I was taking something forward into 2021 and thereon, is keep the main thing, you know, like our careers, our businesses, everything else that we have going on, they're so important to us, but it's one piece of a much larger puzzle. And so those other areas, you know, our mental health, our health in general, our family, our relationships, you know, our spirituality, all those things are so important to the piece of the puzzle. And sometimes we want to make our business and our money 7/8 of the pie when it really is just 1/8 of the pie. And it's really important. I don't know if I believe in work-life balance, but I like to say work-life harmony, where sometimes one thing may be here, but it's like an ebb and a flow. It kind of fluctuates. So really focusing all the pieces of the pie to live a harmonious life.
You know, after everything we have all been through over the past 12 months, and again, looking ahead to 2021 and even 2022, are we better communicators now than we were before the pandemic, or worse, or about the same? What do you guys think?
I think you have to be better or you don't survive in my industry. I think that you have to be better and more honest and upfront, or you're not trusted. I think that you have to be also for the health of yourself and the people that you are taking care of, that you're adding value to. I mean, this past year, we've seen a lot of misinformation, things left out, skewed, et cetera, and that has never went well. By the times that we reported honest news and honest information, there may have been backlash, but it was still truth, and truth is truth. So I think that that's a very important piece of this, honesty and truth in our communicating.
Morgan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we have generally improved our relationships with each other. I think that because it's been, you have to go out of your way a little bit more, I think, to be able to communicate with your friends, your family, your community, your coworkers, et cetera. I think that it's kind of forced us to be better. And I hope that continues.
Yeah.
Brenda asked, what lines of communication did you find most effective during the pandemic and social unrest?
You know, for us, very simply, Facebook and Twitter continue to be highly effective tools for us. Not
And
only
your boss is on Twitter a lot.
he is on Twitter a lot, yes.
That doesn't make him a bad guy, speaking as someone who's on Twitter a lot.
Right, right. But it allows us to see what's happening in real time more quickly, respond more quickly, provide updates more quickly. And I think that you all are looking at our social media a little bit more and looking for those live updates as well. And that helps spur story ideas. Sometimes we see from reporters things that are happening in the community and we're able to respond to them more quickly. I'm with you. I don't love Twitter. I kind of silently stalk and try never to post, but it is just the most effective tool that we have.
Yeah. Isaac?
Yeah, same exact thing. I mean, no matter what industry you're in, it may be Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever it is, but it has to be digital, and it's social media, and you know, these search engines like YouTube and Google versus the more print. It's just too slow. Information's coming out too quick. We just need more instance. So definitely social and the online world.
Michelle asked the crystal ball question that I was about to ask. How are you feeling about 2021, and what do you feel will be the biggest challenges and opportunities moving forward?
I'm feeling optimistic about 2021. I think that we just know so much more than we did last year. Every time I say that, there's a curveball thrown, so I don't want to jinx it. But
there's some wood around here to knock on somewhere.
Yeah. I think a challenge that we will continue to face is encouraging the community, especially as more people get vaccinated and as individuals feel a little bit safer, encouraging them still to maintain their social distance, wear their masks, avoid those large crowds, et cetera. Just, I know everyone's tired of it, but we've got a couple more months before we can really start to, I think, open up all the way.
Isaac, what do you think?
I'm really optimistic, just from the sheer fact of we've been in this for coming up on a year now. We just know more, and the information is still changing, but we just know more. We're better equipped. I mean, I will never forget whenever all this hit back in March 2020, and just the 100% uncertainty. But it's a year later, we just know more, and so I hope this thing leaves. I hope people's lives stop being affected immediately. I am hopeful and opportunistic for where this is going to go and the parts that we can play to make it better, but also we can keep ourselves and the people around us, our loved ones, safe.
I think we're to the point, maybe we're to a final question here, and I have it. When do we, if at all, return to pre-pandemic normal? And you both come at this particular question from different perspectives, but important ones. Isaac, what does your crystal ball tell you?
As I'll speak on it from two fronts. First, entrepreneurship. I think that it is going to be changed forever. I don't think that we go back to doing business the way that we were doing business before. Again, there's a whole layer, I keep coming back to, but transparency, honesty, realness, openness, that's a thick layer that's there now that I don't think is going to go away. People are really, they're not going out as much and whatnot. They're really trying to figure out where they're going to spend their dollars. They're so intentional now with how they interact with businesses, and business owners as well need to be intentional with their people. And then on the racial justice front, again, I think that we're trending in the right direction. I think that the margin is growing for equity. The talks are being happened. Some legislative is moving in the right direction. I think that it's going to continue to be in the news and a big snafu, if you will, but that's a good thing because pressure is being applied and conversations are happening. When the conversations aren't happening and pressure isn't being applied, then it's nothing to worry about. It's not a big deal. However, it is being applied and things are getting done and conversations are being had. People's minds are being opened. I mean, we're talking about it here in front of however many people are watching. Would that have happened before? I don't know. But now when the people think about it, it's just much different. So I'm incredibly hopeful for the future on both fronts.
Morgan, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we go back to pre-pandemic normal, and I don't think that it would be good to go back to pre-pandemic normal. I think that we have seen, felt, lived through so many realities that we cannot ignore, that we will need to confront head on a larger scale, on a simpler, more localized scale, if you will. When can we start hanging out with our friends, be inside each other's homes, things like that? I think it's a little bit up to us to decide. I think that it's ensuring that we continue to be really slow and methodical about how we reintegrate into our communities, making sure that we continue to be safe until we can all get vaccinated. And I do feel optimistic that we'll get there, and I think it will be this calendar year.
Morgan Said, Isaac Collins, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. Have a great day.